Alright guys, so we are back with some more MX versus ATV Reflex. Today we are checking out a new Hangtown replica in Reflex. I know we just had the replica in All Out, but here we have another version of Hangtown in MX versus ATV Reflex, and it is insane. Really, it is crazy. It is super rough. Now this section right here is a tiny bit different. If you remember in All Out, it kind of went to the left instead of the right. And then I suppose it kind of connected back to the track here. And then this entire section in both versions of the track would have been the same. Just that tiny bit was a little bit different. I know All Out was the 2020 version, so I'm assuming this is too. I don't really know how long it took them to make this or how long they had been working on it, but I'm assuming it took some time because you can tell there was a ton of love and effort put into this track, and it is made by the boys over at RDC, which would be Red Rider, Dark Slides, and C4. Three big-time heavy hitters in the Reflex custom track making community. If you've ever played a custom track in Reflex, I'm 100% sure you have probably played a track by all three of these guys. So really good stuff here. Awesome to see them come together to make these tracks. And we had a similar situation to this last year when All Out came out with the replicas. They came out with, I believe it was Spring Creek. And then it was very shortly after, I'm pretty sure it was the RDC guys, came out with their own version of Spring Creek. So it is very similar to that. And this track is no exception to the quality that you come to expect when any of these guys make a track by themselves or when they come together to make a track and take on a massive project such as this. So the quality of the track is fantastic, and the only difference that I see, well, okay, there's a ton of differences actually, but the main track layout difference would be that section I kind of pointed out to you at the beginning, where in All Out it went to the left and in this game it went to the right, or in this version it went to the right. So that is the main layout difference in the two Hangtown maps that we have. But there's actually a bunch of differences to this track. I would say that this version in Reflex by the guys at RDC is rougher than the All Out version. And I know Rainbow Studios can make some really gnarly, rough tracks. I mean, they did it exceptionally well with High Point, so I know they can do it, but I feel like the guys at RDC actually made this track rougher than All Out. And one of the main differences, because both versions have ruts in the corners, so you have multiple line choice there, but one of the main differences, and you'll be able to see it here coming up, and there's several instances of it, is there's some ruts on the straightaways and before leading up to the faces of some of the jumps. Here, just ruts down the, not really a straight, but not really in a corner either. There's insane ruts like that on the track, and then here you can see it on the face of that jump kind of. And I've seen that before in other tracks, more, I don't know if recently, but the easiest for me to remember was Glen Helen. Glen Helen, the replica, the Glen Helen replica had insane ruts down the straightaways. It was just super, super rutty everywhere, which made that track very, very difficult, but made that track very unique, very accurate. Just an insane, legendary replica track in Glen Helen. So that, it kind of reminds me of that. I have seen it in other tracks too, but typically you don't see that very often. I mean, people make the outdoor tracks rough and rutted and really nasty, but this one, it feels a little bit more than usual, which is great. It adds that level of difficulty to it, because this track, typically when I think of replica, or not replicas, when I think outdoor style tracks, motocross tracks in any game, usually they're a bit easier. You know, they're a bit wider. They don't usually have the technicality that a supercross track has, you know. I mean, you have to have a flow and a rhythm, but not to the extent that you would have to have on a supercross track. This isn't really the case with this track, and it is kind of an exception. Now remember, I always feel the need to state this in a video because some people think that I'm just so full of myself and think that I'm so good at these games that my opinion is the only one that matters. That is not true at all. I rarely believe that I'm very good at these moto games. Most of the time, I feel like at best I'm average. Most of the time below average. Occasionally, I felt like I was pretty good with Supercross Encore, but that's because I played that game a ton, and the friends that I played with were some of the best in the world. So I just kind of, you do something long enough, eventually you're going to get okay at it. But not the case with Reflex or most moto games. So if you're sitting there thinking that this is an easy track and I'm wrong, you very well could be right, but I'm speaking on my own behalf that this track is tough. It is very difficult. I would say I had a tough time on it, similar to what I had with the Wild Wilderness track by Red Ryder. That was a tough Supercross track. This track I probably spent the same, maybe a bit more time on to try and get decent laps. And I know I didn't get every line or rut out there for you, but it was tough. It was really easy to carry too much speed into a corner. It was really easy to pop out over a rut. It was really easy to get cross-rutted on some of those ruts on the straights and the faces of those jumps. It was very, very easy to mess up. I would end up out of bounds and off track and just crashing sideways, pointing the wrong way on the track. It happened a ton, and I know these laps are okay, but that happened fairly often, and I had to reset because I wanted to show you better, cleaner laps. So very, very, very tough track. A lot of times with a national style track, you can just kind of hold it wide open and it's not really a big deal, even if it's a bit rough. This track, I felt like I had to set up for the corners a bit more because there's so many ruts in each corner. There's a ton of big braking bumps that you had to slow down a bit early, maybe lean back so you didn't endo into the corner. Really insane. And there were some ruts that were so deep and so sharp that even if you did get into them and you were going too fast, you crashed. Okay, so the ruts, some of them were so deep that you couldn't lay it over, or you couldn't be going too fast because you crashed. So it was kind of realistic. You had to slow down a bit for some of those really big, deep inside ruts. So I really appreciated that. That added a ton more difficulty to it. And just the overall roughness of the track was insane. But I mean, there I tried getting into that inside rut, but it was so tough. And I know we're hitting some of those ruts a lot slower than some of the better Reflex players would be hitting them. But not that easy. Not that easy, man. And it had a variety of ruts. Some of them would grab you a bit better than others, but I felt like all of them worked pretty good and they evened them out pretty decent. So if you went to the outside, even if it was a bit smoother and a bit easier, they might make it a tiny bit rougher, or they might put a little roller in front of it. They found a pretty good balance between making all the lines viable and even. So you get rewarded for taking the inside, but you don't necessarily get punished for taking the outside, but it isn't necessarily faster, at least at the beginning. And this triple was insane. I had my bike set to mostly acceleration, I believe, so I changed from what I normally would have for this track, and I still had a tough time getting over that triple. If you hit it, throw a whip glitch over it, maybe it's not so bad, but just to hit it from the outside without ever really slowing down was really, really tough. That triple was insane. It was freaking-normous. They did a really good job with it, but it was really tough for me to get over. I actually don't believe I ever got over it clean. I think we cased it almost every lap, so I do apologize for that, but it gives you something if you have it on PC. It gives you something to go and try. You can see that I'm casing it and having troubles with hitting some of the ruts in the corners and just having a tough time on the track overall, so you can go and see if it's easy for you, if it's hard for you, and if it's easy for you, then, well, consider yourself a much better Reflex player than I am. But yeah, insane. They did a great job. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. I would say that I always say this, but it's one of my more favorite recent Reflex tracks. It's always fun to play a replica track. It's always fun to play a rough track. It's always fun to play a track by Red Rider, Dark Slides 19, or C4 Detonator. It basically checks all the boxes of everything I like to see in a custom Reflex track, or just a track in general in any game. I highly recommend you guys go try this out. Give it a download. Maybe leave a comment when you download about how much you appreciate it, the work they put in for these, because I love seeing them. And I'm just glad that they feel like they still want to do this, because it keeps Reflex going. And I think I can speak for a majority of people in saying that we love it. We love seeing these tracks and love seeing that we get to keep having new content, new DLC quality content for free by these Reflex custom mod track making creators. So you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really, really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.